They break through bounds, leave no trace. With courage they embrace space engagement. Constellations whisper and shine as they voyage through space and time, exploring mysteries, setting the pace. We're showing our faces, women in space engagement. Women in space engagement, burning bright, guiding swift the celestial light. Together we rise. No frontier can hold women in space, courageous and bold. Women in space, courageous and bold.
Hey, we have a theme song.
Tamara, did you commission a theme song?
I totally made us a theme song. I couldn't resist.
No, that's awesome.
So welcome everyone. Welcome to the April all members meeting for Women in Space Engagement, as you may have heard in the song. We are thrilled to be back. We were live in Washington, D.C. last month, and now we're here. And so I will be so happy to now invite Jomia to greet the crowd. So Jomia, I'm putting you on spotlight and take it away.
Sounds good. Hey, everyone. Hope everyone is having a great April. I'm super excited for today's panel, so don't want to take up too much of everyone's time, but just from housekeeping wise, for those that haven't been to our meetings before, SSPI-WISE is focused on women in space engagement. We have several working groups, mentoring, networking, STEM outreach, elevating women, all centered around bring women together from all over regarding space. So if anyone's interested in helping out or participating in these events, definitely check out our website. We'll put the link in the chat shortly. And talk with our current working group leads to see how you can get involved. In addition, the leads election is actually going to come up really quickly again this year. It runs from July to June. So we'll have election slates coming out probably in the next month or so. So if anyone's interested in becoming a lead for any of the groups, definitely reach out. You can reach out to Tamara, me, Vinny, or any of the leads and get more information on that. But each of the working groups, we do have multiple leads because we know how busy everyone is and everything is volunteer. So if you're worried about how much you can contribute, don't worry about that. We just love involvement any way people want to be involved. So with that, let me turn it back over to Tamara for our panel discussion today.
Absolutely. Let's see if I can figure this out. Yes. Okay, so folks, thank you so much for being here. And thank you to SSPI-WISE for taking on this particular topic. As some of you know, SSPI is right now in the midst of what we call a topic campaign, where we're going to focus all of our content. Right now, we're having our podcast. We just released the first podcast this week. And there will be also video content that will be coming out. And this session here that is on the topic of the invisible, indispensable infrastructure that is space and satellite. We are talking briefly. I'm just going to give you a beautiful introduction that was written here. It is an exciting time to be a part of satellite and space industry. Launches are happening every day from New Zealand to Florida. The ground systems are going virtual. We have software-defined satellite, and all of these changes are coming together to impact the way satellites play with infrastructure. I want to put this in my own words here because I love saying this. we are now in a place where we are augmenting and in some cases supplanting terrestrial infrastructure because of the capabilities that being in space give us. So that's our topic. That's the topic that SSPI is undertaking. And this panel today is going to give us a perspective. I also want to just say that this panel is put together by the Elevating Women Working Group. And I think this is very key. We know that, that there are amazing women all throughout this industry, and yet we don't always get to hear them. And so I'm very grateful to the Elevating Women team working group to make sure that we are elevating the voices of women who are experts in their field to bring relevant content to the public and to put their faces out there and make sure that we hear from actual women who are doing actual space and satellite work. I'm excited for this panel. I'm looking forward to it. And with that, I'm thrilled to introduce to you our moderator for today, Toni Lee Rudnicki. Toni is a Fractional Chief Marketing Officer, bringing executive marketing expertise to small and medium-sized satellite and space. In this role, Ms. Rudnicki acts as the company's CMO, defining the marketing strategy, translating marketing strategy into action and results, providing strategic insights, formulating branding strategies, and driving market transformation. Toni began her satellite career working at the Goddard Space Center. She continues her interest in satellites as the CMO for iDirect and for Speedcast. And in addition to these full-time roles, she has over 7 years of experience as a fractional CMO positioning companies for growth. Toni, welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here as well. I think I've had a little bit of discussions with each of the panelists, and I think we're going to have a great time. So
Very much looking forward to it.
So what I'd like to do is actually introduce the 4 panelists, and then we'll get started. So first, I'll introduce Beatrice Mock. Beatrice is the Corporate Development Director at Kacific Broadband Satellite Group. Beatrice has over 10 years of experience working in leading telecommunication companies. At Kacific, Beatrice is overseeing corporate development and social projects. Kacific One, Kacific's Ka-band HTS GEO satellite, was launched in 2019 to provide affordable and accessible internet to underserved communities across 25 regions across APAC. Kacific 2 is planned to launch to expand capacity in current regions and expand in new markets in the next few years. Beatrice was previously with Singtel, Asia's leading telecommunication company. She holds a BA in Communication Studies from Nanyang Technology University of Singapore. And Beatrice is joining us actually today from Abu Dhabi, although her home is in Singapore. So welcome, Beatrice. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you for the very nice introduction, and I'm very honored to be here. Thank you, SSPI. Looking forward to the panel.
Oh, it'll be great. Next, I would like to introduce Sarah Tunavat, Senior Account Manager at Appliot. Sarah is a seasoned senior account manager dedicated to driving growth and fostering lasting client relationships in the satellite IoT technology space. Leveraging 7+ years of experience, she delivers innovative end-to-end solutions tailored to meet clients' unique needs and networks. Passionate about the intersection of technology and connectivity, she is committed to advancing the adoption of satellite IoT solutions with a strategic mindset and a customer-centric approach. At Appliot, she plays a pivotal role in driving the success of her organization and empowering clients to stay connected no matter where or how remote they are. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm so happy to be here with you and excited to start our discussion. Thank you.
Sarah's coming from Kuwait, so we have some interesting panelists for you today.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Haley Bauser. Haley is a senior product engineer at Varda Space Industries, where she develops the pharmaceutical experiments for hypergravity and microgravity. She recently served as the responsible pharmaceutical engineer for Varda's first mission, in which the metastable forms of Rudnicki were successfully crystallized in orbit and returned to Earth. Prior to Varda, Haley received her PhD in applied physics from Caltech, where she worked on designing and fabricating nanoscale optics for renewable energy technologies, including space-based solar power. While at Caltech, she was the recipient of the inaugural Kelvey Nanoscience Institute Catalyst Award. Welcome, Haley.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here and talk about the exciting world of pharmaceuticals and space and how satellites support them.
Super. And then our last panelist is Carolyn Reid. She is a spacecraft operations engineer at Rocket Lab. After graduating from UC Berkeley, she was selected as a 2020 Brooke Owens Fellow, interning at Astronus. Caroline has worked at Maxar as a flight engineer flying geostationary satellites, and at NASA JPL as a DSN scheduler for the Lucy, Mars Express, and Goldstone Solar System radar missions. At Rocket Lab, she works on operation development and on-orbit command and control for missions including orbital re-entry, Winnebago, and planetary exploration. And welcome, Caroline.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
One of the things we're going to do today is Haley and Caroline are actually going to share a little bit about the pharmaceutical. So they are tag teaming as part of our panel today. So now it's time to get started. So our first question, and I'll start with you, Beatrice. When you consider the current state of our industry, how do you see the changes happening with the role that satellite plays in becoming an active part of the integrated infrastructure?
Well, what we see today is really a shift from what we see as previously niche technology. Satellite was really known as, a very niche industry. And we find that the mainstream awareness really increases, first of all, visibility and also adoption of satellite infrastructure. Number two, it increases the demand for internet usage. And I think overall, it's really a good thing for the industry. So Kacific, we focus very much on rural connectivity. And what it means for us, especially for our company, is that we start to see there's a disruption of traditional telecom infrastructure. They start using satellite-based broadband as a very feasible and very tangible alternative. And of course, a lot of, same with the panelists, you will find that there's a lot of innovation in the product offerings and systems. So there's advances in like the design, the manufacturing, the launch capabilities. It helps to provide a superior service and also a lower price point. And for us, I think one of the things that we have done and are still continuing to do is to bring the price point of satellite now to a level where many sections that used to be previously unable to afford satellite as connectivity can now do so. So we move away from this niche reputation. We become truly accepted and integrated into like a total communication solutions, giving access to end users. The other one is also, there's a lot of this significant airtime helps us to bring community awareness and acceptance of how satellite can be applied to a wide range of areas. So for example, beyond the traditional, we see ourselves being more relevant to diverse sets of industries like disaster management, mainstream internet access, and it kind of also adapts the way that we develop our products and solutions. So just the last part from me, there's a lot of talk about hybrid constellations, the combinations of LEO and GEO for satellite. And of course, hybrid networks are a huge major development for our industry. But for us, of course, we are focused on rural connectivity. And what we see as the need identified is just simple, easy to deploy connectivity solutions. So for us, we are looking at things like software-defined satellites, micro geo satellites. It could be really very tangible options for us, and also vertical integration. So maybe satellite telco integration to leverage the strengths of both technologies. Yeah. So this is our perspective on the changes in the industry, given that we focus very much on rural connectivity and that target market.
Thank you, Beatrice. That was very good. Sarah, would you like to answer the question next?
Yes, so basically the satellite services, in my opinion, can help the industries become smart in a way, like you can switch to smart farming, smart fishing, with the deployment of satellite IoT solutions. For example, we at Appliot, we're trying to blend the satellite IoT technology into the existing business processes. So whatever terrestrial infrastructure that you have in your business, devices, sensors, whatever remote sensors, we can blend all of that into one end-to-end solution with satellite IoT terminals that you can really deploy quickly, plug and play, very easy. You can even configure it on your mobile application. So blending the infrastructure with the satellite IoT solution is how we're going to make your business really smart. For example, if we switch to smart agriculture, for example, Appliot deploys satellite IoT, which is enabled with AI to provide real-time insights into your farm. It can help you deal with weather changes on spot. It can give you insight into your soil humidity. It can even track your assets like trucks and tractors and maybe even your livestock on the farm. So this is basically how tangible it is and how easy it is and to apply satellite IoT into your process and make it all in all really, really smart and improve your business and profitability at the end.
Super, thank you.
Thank you.
Haley and Caroline, obviously we're going to hear from you from the pharmaceutical perspective. So to explain to us how this is all coming together from the standpoint of the infrastructure.
I can let Caroline start with the satellite side, and then I'll just take kind of the effects on pharmaceutical. Do you want to tackle it that way?
Perfect.
Sure,
That
yeah.
works.
So from the satellite side of things, access to space, like especially now in this kind of era of the industry, is becoming even more accessible than ever. So what that means is that our technology is developing faster than it ever has before. And I think historically, satellites have kind of been more invisible because it's things like communication satellites or, yeah, I mean, that's like that's what I used to work on, is like communication satellites. But nowadays with the capability of like in-space manufacturing and this re-entry capability that we have demonstrated with Winnebago, it's becoming a much more visible thing. It's a physical thing that you get to bring back from space and like then put into use on Earth. And so that's the direction that we're going with this technology, is bringing space back down to Earth and having it much more like tangible as a service.
Yeah, and like I'll add that on the pharmaceutical side of things, crystallization of active pharmaceutical ingredients was previously really just confined to the International Space Station. And while a lot of really cool research was done there, you know, due to the planning duration, limited resources, high cost association with any human spaceflight, the value of microgravity drug development hasn't been fully realized by pharmaceutical companies back here on Earth. And so it hasn't been able to address the everyday challenges that are most relevant to these pharmaceutical companies trying to actually develop these, you know, novel drugs. And so with the increased cadence of launches and re-entry enabled by, you know, the W series, we're able to bypass all the limitations of the ISS and expand the possibilities for microgravity crystallization of pharmaceuticals. And so by having our Varda pharmaceutical hardware inside our re-entry capsule mated to the Rocket Lab satellite, we're able to work with customers on a tailored approach to address their crystallization challenges and explore how microgravity can help without adding all the time and capital expenses associated with human spaceflight.
Cool, thank you. Now, the second question, what are the challenges as well as the benefits of satellite in space becoming an indispensable part of the integrated infrastructure? So Sarah, you want to go first?
Sure. So, of course, we have some challenges in this industry, which make it really tough. But the first challenge that I could think of is it is really hard to believe in satellite services because people don't see it, and seeing is believing. So what we do in Applio to go around this kind of lack of trust in the satellite services for people who are new to the industry is that we try to run some system demonstration, show them how it really works, show them real case on the ground and use cases and all of that, just to make it more approachable. Another challenge in my opinion is competition. If when satellite services go really mainstream, there will be a lot of players in the market, and the competition will be huge, and this will really affect the pricing, and of course, less profit. So this might be one of the really very sensitive challenges. Another thing is, I think, maintaining the quality of the service. When you really go big in the market, you really have to work hard to maintain the quality, and within the big competition in the market, it's really essential. On the other hand, there are many benefits, like bringing brand awareness and enhancement, like you will have bigger exposure, which really puts a lot of responsibility at the same time on you to provide the best service you can. So, but of course, greater exposure is more customers and more business. Another benefit I would say is this will open up some partnership opportunities. So if the mainstream becomes a success, you will have more collaboration, more partnership with other organizations and this will open up more markets, like more areas, and of course, profitability. Maybe another thing I could think of is the enhanced innovation. So when you go mainstream, you will really work hard to meet the needs and accommodate the fast evolving technologies in the market. So this is one thing that you will keep you tiptoe. Thank you.
Thank you. So Haley and Caroline, obviously we have an inkling of the benefits from you, but we'd like to also look at what do you see the challenges, and then maybe Haley, take the benefits just a little further.
Yeah, I can speak to kind of the satellite side of things. As like reentry capabilities become a more regular thing and become part of the infrastructure of space, one thing that is key is scalability. So how do we make these frequent enough that it is profitable? So scaling that and being able to keep up with that. And the best way for us to scale them is automation. So that's a big technological kind of forefront that we're on, and automating spacecraft operations as much as we can. And then in addition to that, increasing the reliability. So if you're going to make it part of the integrated infrastructure, that means we're relying on it for a purpose. And so we have to have a reliable system, and that needs to be end to end. You need to have reliable supply chains. You need to have reliable launches. You need to have a reliable spacecraft system, reliable ground systems. So we all together as an industry have to like grow and have this reliability as we scale and become more integrated.
Haley.
And our role at Varda is pretty decoupled from the satellite infrastructure. You know, we're only up there for a brief period, and then once the reentry capsule comes back to Earth, we close out our project activities here. And so while the satellite enables our capsule reentry, our role is more decoupled as we're focused on crystallization outcomes. And so, you know, able to use microgravity to uncover new crystallization outcomes that can then accelerate drug development. So that's obviously the big benefit of, you know, this type of reentry and satellite capability. And then, yeah, as Caroline said, the challenges is just, you know, as this, you know, gains more, as, you know, pharmaceutical companies start to realize the benefit of this, you know, the ecosystem of commercial low Earth orbit has previously just been primarily for transmitting photons. So this new industry is pretty nascent. So we're going to have to pretty rapidly push the envelope on speed, cadence, capacity, reliability to, really be part of this infrastructure back on Earth and meet our customers' needs.
Great. Beatrice, obviously you look at it from the remote part. So what do you see both as the challenges as well as the benefits? And I think you should tell the story about how you get some of your stuff to the remote places.
Yeah, so, well, I'll start with the benefits. I think, first of all, what we see is that there's more state focus, more international focus, and that leads to a lot more understanding done about the industry and the players. And to the end users, there's enhanced connectivity options. So because the governments and international spotlight is on satellite as a very critical infrastructure, integrated into the systems today, it does mean, of course, more options for the users, more business for us as well. And of course, it will close the digital divide. And I think back to that story about how we close the digital divide, I was sharing with the panelists that today, how we have actually configured our satellite is to make it compatible with really small satellite terminals. Intentionally, because we wanted to make it easy to transport and easy to install in rural and remote areas where often the only mode of transport to them is by a boat or by a cargo plane, which can't fit, very big goods. So it's really more business for us, more options for the end user. And I think the other part that I wanted to point out was on policy and regulation. With that spotlight, it brings a lot more openness in the markets. It's like liberalized policy and regulation changes. So these are all the good things. Challenges, I think, Sarah rightly pointed out, the same as what we're seeing today. Of course, when it becomes more and more commercialized, there's the good thing is that there's pressure for state operators and governments to improve their offerings and lower the prices. But the note is that there's predatory pricing to kind of gain market share as more and more players come in. And I think there has to be a very strong balance between profitability to be sustainable as a business and then going into like predatory pricing. So that's just a double-edged sword there. And of course, the other part about the challenge that we face is that as our rural connectivity becomes more mainstream, we start having to adapt to different audiences. We used to speak to like solely governments and telecom operators in the past, and now increasingly we start speaking to businesses, people who want a piece of us. So we start adapting our language and helping them to understand the end user, what their needs are, and it look and feel similar to what they're used to, which is 4G broadband. Yeah, so there's a bit of education that is needed there, and also seamless user experience as we adapt to different audiences with the opening of the market. So yeah, that's in my point of view, some of the challenges and the benefits that we are facing as we connect the rural markets.
And I think all four of you actually in some way or another did talk about how as it becomes part of the infrastructure, it also becomes not as niche or not as specialized. So then you have people who really don't care it's satellite or terrestrial or whatever, but you have to train them or teach them to bring it to life for what it means for them. So I think that, for me, that was one definite kind of theme throughout what you've talked about.
Right.
Now, the next question I think is kind of fun because you get to think about what could it be like in 5 years, 10 years? So if you think into the future, how do you envision this integrated infrastructure actually changing the way businesses are driven? So, obviously we've talked a little bit about the mesh of things coming together, the blending of the environments. But now, if you go 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and all of that stuff that we've sort of just started to talk about is commonplace. It's normal. Then what do you envision as the changes in business, the business drivers, how people look at it, et cetera? So I will start with Caroline and Haley this time.
Yeah, I think with the capability of reentry, if that's going to become a commonplace thing that's going to be mainstream, happening all the time, a big focus is going to be, like I kind of mentioned before, on like automation. So my job would change from being a hands-on, like actively commanding a satellite versus having our automation being able to handle things. Because if we're going to scale and have it be happening more frequently, we're going to rely more on the software side of things as opposed to humans, on console actively commanding. I think that's kind of a big spotlight, and that's kind of where I see things going in the next years as these businesses become, as this part of our business becomes more.
Question for you, Caroline. How do you see the role of AI? What role do you see AI playing in that software environment you just described?
That's a good question. I don't know that it's something that we're too focused on yet. We just did Winnebago 1 and that was awesome. And now we're working to improve it for the next 3 Winnebago missions that we have. I think it can be useful as an assistant, but obviously it's very important when you're doing something like reentry. Safety is very important still. You're re-entering a capsule over the atmosphere. You're flying over places where people might live. You want to make sure that you have all the safeguards in place to execute the mission safely and successfully. So I still think that humans will definitely be in the loop to an extent.
That makes sense. What do you see, Haley?
Yeah, so this is a topic that I am just so excited about. I love thinking about like where reentry is going to be in this pharmaceutical industry in a few years, because, I certainly see in the immediate future us expanding our capabilities in orbit. So that will allow us to get more real-time data and really understand the ins and outs of what's actually going on the capsule. And with this, we're going to get more data in each run. And with the more data and more, increasing cadence, we're going to start getting a lot more molecules being experimented on orbit. And, the more molecules we get, the more we can start bettering our intuition. And the more we better our intuition about how microgravity affects pharmaceuticals, the more, real world drug benefit is actually going to happen. And so, as we get to monthly, even weekly launches, we eventually want to get to the point where, right after reentry, my team's down there checking out the drugs, figuring out what we got. And as we're doing that, another one's going right back up to make a real rinse and repeat process. And so I guess in the future, we've talked a lot about how satellites are going to be kind of really integrated into, an economy for everyone. But, current pharmaceutical companies have complex screening procedures when they're trying to figure out what drugs, how to develop their drugs. Microgravity can just be like a standard part of that. And so, that'll just be available for everyone. And, space won't feel so far away because it'll be part of our everyday drug development economy.
Yeah. It's interesting, if you think about just the business processes and what you just described, it really is kind of becoming, all of a sudden, it's just normal. It's not something scary or secretive anymore. So I do see that kind of meshing together a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
How about you, Beatrice? What do you see the future?
Well, we are a satellite operator, so I think maybe our lens is very much from that angle, where for a lot of countries, we are sort of like no one single network fits all, no one size fits all. So we often complement terrestrial networks, and people use like multiple systems. A country will use multiple systems. For what we see is that we definitely need to disrupt the value chain. I think we see ourselves maybe not so much solely the traditional operator way of selling wholesale bandwidth to the telecom operator and the buck stops there. We see ourselves doing more managed services. And what I mean by managed services is that we start bundling our services into like telecom plans and working with local providers to actually resell it. And we manage the whole network in terms of service performance, any outage, any service level agreements, we manage it our end. And these local entrepreneurs would just be very much our voice on the ground, our hands on the ground, who would distribute for us. So it's a managed service. It's easy for them to actually sell and easy for them to actually distribute. The other thing that, we see very much in the future on further disruption down would be how can we better work with or integrate with telecom operators. That's one of the big things that we are actually working on over the next few years, working with 4G cell towers. And yeah, I think the only note that I would add is that agility is really key for operator, especially new generation operators like us. And it's not always been the case for traditional satellite operators. So that's our point of view as an operator that provides broadband access.
A question for you, Beatrice. As a satellite operator, what role do you see 5G playing in the integration of terrestrial and satellite? Because obviously, this is the first time, at least in my career, that we've been invited to the table on a standard. So, what do you actually see? What role do you see that playing in that future integrated infrastructure?
I will have to share my point of view again from the side of rural, because there is a lot of very innovative topics about 5G and satellite integration, but I can't comment on that. It's not my expertise. I think for us, from a business lens, as we look at it, of course, the urban areas will be on a rush to go to 5G, 6G, but again, looking at the rural connectivity where they are still suffering from 2G and 3G, we kind of see the landscape as, okay, let them go into 5G and 6G for the urban areas, but we still need to focus on delivering at least meaningful internet through backhaul or through satellite backhaul to provide them 4G access even. So I'm not sure I can comment very much, I'm sorry, about how the innovation of 5G and satellite, because again, our focus has always been on closing the digital divide, which from what we see today, they're still very much at 2G and 3G, and we're just trying to push the needle there to kind of close
Makes
the gap
sense.
up to 4G. Yeah. But maybe the other panelists would be able to comment more on 5G and satellite actually than
How about Caroline, do you have an opinion on how 5G, because satellites becoming part of the standard, is that impacting anything that Rocket Lab is doing?
I don't think it really falls under my, day-to-day.
Okay, I just thought
concerns.
I'd ask.
Yeah.
Not a problem. So Sarah, back to you. Certainly, what do you see is the future? Because obviously the Apliot view is much more focused on the end user, the business applications, whether it's agriculture or fisheries or whatever. So from your perspective, if you take a snapshot, what does it look like in 5 years and then 10 years?
Before I answer that, I was intrigued by the question about integrating satellite with 5G or 4G telecom network. For example, what we are providing in Apliot is a satellite IoT solution for the IoT devices and sensors, scattered around, let's say, big areas and big rural areas. So whenever there's a failure in GSM network, satellite can pick up. So our solution, or let's say the terminals, which has the antenna and the modem inside, can have dual mode. So you can have GSM and satellite. So whichever connects goes. So this is one of also the this is one of the points we will really focus on in the design of the solution, the terminals, to be also able to collaborate with the telecommunications and GSM service providers, because we can always fill a gap if there's, a gap in such rural areas. Now, going to the future, I think in the future, everyone will want to have a satellite phone, so they can have their number and phone calls everywhere on Earth, like one bill. So I think it's evolving really, really fast. And the good thing about Apliot is that it is already AI enabled, which makes it really future-proof. So whatever new applications and needs emerge in the market, let's say in the smart agriculture, which I spoke about in the first topic. So when the smart agriculture grow with IoT and satellite solutions, there will definitely be more data exchange in real time. There will be more applications to deal with and new needs. And at this point, I'm sure that definitely IoT technology will eventually evolve to accommodate, but it's going to be fast.
Now, one of the things that it's interesting from Appliot's point of view, I believe, is just the different vertical markets or the application areas that that Appliot is focusing on. How do you see those? How do you see them today? Because the IoT with those applications is kind of what you were saying, the smart environment. But then, how do you also see what applications do you, or maybe you don't know, but are there other applications that you think will evolve as a result of kind of establishing this smart environment with this smart agriculture, smart farming, smart energy? How do you see that evolving over time?
Of course, I mean, we can apply this satellite IoT technology and point of sale. This is going to be a huge turnaround and huge change. Like you can rely on POS anywhere, in the desert, in the mountains, and that's it. In energy as well, especially in the drilling sites, onshore, offshore, they will rely only on satellite in the future. And because it's really reliable, proper connectivity, you can deliver your data in real time. So the data exchange will really be really fast and reliable. Also, you can, another application is a fleet management. Fleet management will have a huge benefit out of satellite IoT, especially with AI power. So it's really going to be a need in the market, I see, in a couple of years. Not really too far, maybe now already.
Could be.
Yeah, why we are talking now, it is it is there. Yeah, it is the future.
I had a follow-up question for Haley and Caroline, and mostly because you mentioned it, Caroline, but I don't think we've actually talked about it from the standpoint of what it was. Can you give us a little background on Winnebago and what you actually did and what that, it's a really cool name too. So, people might be interested in that as well.
Yeah, Haley, do you want to kind of give the high level overview?
So I guess I can start with the name. Varda was originally based out of an old RV repair shop. And in the early days of Varda, people would still come in and actually ask to get their RV fixed. And people would have to say, no, we don't do that anymore. We do in-space manufacturing. So that's kind of where some of the names came from. So that's the first part. And I guess you asked a little bit about what we actually did up there. Yeah, just want to make sure I touch on your points. Yeah, so in our first mission, we were basically it was like a demo test mission to see, can we manufacture or can we perform this crystallization profile that we perform on Earth, and can we make sure it performs the same way, and can we re-enter it successfully? And so we chose the drug we chose to work on was called ritonavir. It's a HIV protease inhibitor, and we developed this melt-based crystallization process for it that developed its metastable form. So what that means is that's like the least stable form of a drug. And so, if that can survive the radiation hits, the temperature upon reentry, the impact of something like, the parachute deploying, then we can feel, fairly confident in the platform that, we've developed, that we can safely, secure the payload and say, hey, to our customers, hey, what we made in orbit is actually what you're going to get back down on Earth. So we successfully crystallized this metastable form, brought it back down to Earth. The results of this are currently on ChemArchive, but we basically showed that not only did we crystallize the metastable form, but we had a bunch of control vials, and they returned exactly as packed. So we just made some different forms of ritonavir terrestrially, sent that up as well to see if that suffered from any form conversion or degradation. And so far, so good. So that's the summary of our first mission from the pharmaceutical side.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, that is an interesting application, right? It's one that certainly has lots of potential in my mind. And with all the, this is going to sound really weird, but with all the restraints or the restrictions in the supply chain on that we're seeing in the US and drugs. That sounds so exciting.
Definitely. Yeah, and like ideally, we'll be able, because gravity impacts the crystallization of a drug, and so we can access forms that you can't really get on Earth, and so that can like expand the type of dosing that a drug can do. So, something that's really uncomfortable for patients, like a day-long IV, if we can adjust the particle size a certain way, it can be given to you in a shot, and that's a lot better for patient quality of life. Or we can find new forms that are more stable, so drugs can, exist on Earth in the way they can't when they're crystallized under terrestrial conditions. So really exciting stuff.
Cool. Now, one of the things I wanted to do, I'm supposed to do this probably earlier, but if anyone has questions for the panelists, you can put them in the chat. Certainly, I would also ask the panelists if they have questions for each other, because we've never really met as a group except 5 minutes before we started this. So. I think, Caroline, were you saying something? You're on mute if you were.
No, I was just thinking out loud. I was like, I don't have any questions.
Well, one of the things we sort of talked about in some ways is becoming part of mainstream. And we've talked about what does satellite becoming part of mainstream mean? And I think Sarah actually mentioned that. I'm curious, beyond what we've talked about so far, do you think there are additional challenges of becoming this more mainstream type environment? Are we going to continue to be a space and satellite industry as such? Or is that going to evolve as we become more of the telecom market? And I'll open that up to anyone who wants to talk.
I think, yeah, I'm gonna just have a small comment here. I think if we go really mainstream with satellite services and we are like available to everyone from end user to business to machine, whatever, I think we really have to be careful about the scalability, to be able to scale our services to meet all the needs with the proper quality, the same high quality of service providing. So it is a challenge, I guess, and we'll see.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The scalability, I think you're right, because we've been this niche, and as we become something bigger and bigger and bigger, being able to scale what we do and still integrate it and do the security that I think, Caroline, you were the one that was talking about the security that's involved and the safety and things like that.
To scale the infrastructure as well, it is.
Cool.
Tamara. Yeah.
I see your hands up.
She's like, there's a hand. I don't know who it is. It's me. And also,
thank you, because I'm having trouble with hands.
Okay, Jamia and Elizabeth also put questions in the chat. I have a question about infrastructure from the standpoint of staffing. When I think about the continued integration of space and satellite technologies into terrestrial technologies, I also think about the fact that we're already having staffing issues in our industry. It's already hard to recruit enough people. And do we think that becoming more, as we're talking about it, mainstream helps or creates more problems for us? And then the second part of that is, I guess it's not a second part, it's a totally separate question, but I'm also very worried about access to space. Something like what Varda and Rocket Lab are doing, critically important. But the more we use space, the more we use space. And so I have a concern about, the sustainability. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now.
Yeah, I would say I think becoming more mainstream is a benefit, because for the industry, we then become more in the public eye and people are more aware that our industry exists, that we get to do these cool things. One thing that I think about is how the current state of the industry, we're moving toward more commercialization. We get to do these cool like R&D type missions as a commercial company. It's not just NASA doing the cool science anymore. You can come work at Rocket Lab and be deorbiting a capsule one day and then work on a Mars mission the next day. Like that's basically what my job is. And so I think it creates more opportunities. And so we then have to make sure that we're like communicating. You're not just doing one type of satellite. There's so many different varieties of spacecraft and mission profiles that you can work on. So if one doesn't tickle your fancy, then you can do another one. Yeah, and then I think with the sustainability thing, that's another thing with like the scalability of our infrastructure. A big part of infrastructure is collision avoidance. If we're going to be in low Earth orbit, you may be coming across close encounters with other spacecraft. And so that is a big part of our infrastructure that we'll have to scale to meet the need of increased use of space. And right now that's handled by like government entities, but maybe in the future that model might change to be handled in a different way or something to meet the needs.
I have an answer for both of those as well. I think just kind of building off what Caroline said, which I think is really great. Varda is a microgravity enabled life science company, but there are a lot of other opportunities for microgravity development. And so, you mentioned staffing earlier. Well, I think I have a little bit of a different background. I don't have an aerospace background. I have a background in science and material science and physics. And as we expand what type of industries are accessing microgravity, you actually will get more people, because there are people who might not even really be in this industry yet, joining as more opportunities for their work enter, something like microgravity and low Earth orbit. So I think that's a perspective to have on some of the, staffing as this field expands. And then as far as sustainability goes, our goal is to have our reentry capsules be reusable. So that's at least one aspect. We're not using, we're not building from scratch every single time in the future, ideally. So I think that's one step that we're kind of taking towards that route.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add to that. We actually see, I think to answer the question on staffing and resources, interesting that, for example, for Singapore, we never had a space agency, and we have just actually created our own space agency just a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So really, we see more and more interest and development of talent for the space sector and, future workforce. People are actually signing up, to attend this meetings. But on the same note, with all these space agencies popping up, it also means that, and this is just an observation, I think countries are getting more and more nationalistic. There's this whole concern about security of data, where your ground systems are at, and they start forming their own space agencies. They are a bit antagonistic or guarded against foreign satellite operators. They want to launch their own satellites now as well. So I would say that's the other part of having such awareness of space, and while it's good they're building space agencies, they are also getting a little bit more nationalistic. So I think that's a bit of an observation from my end. Yeah.
We do have a couple questions in the chat. So there's one specifically for you, Beatrice, and it says, in your introduction, you mentioned that in some cases, satellite was replacing terrestrial. Can you talk more about where that is happening, and what the satellite characteristics are or attributes that cause that to happen?
Yeah. So I think really it's the technology. In the past, where islands are using satellite technology, used to be on the bands of C-band and Ku band. These are of a lower spectrum. Of course, it's a lot more expensive. And as technology evolves, so for example, for Kacific, when we launched our satellite, we were very clear that we wanted to use the spectrum Ka band. And what Ka band does is that, of course, there's a trade-off. It is more susceptible to rain fade, but what it can do is to give you much higher capacity. So now, for example, even having this Zoom meeting, it's completely possible, very reliable on Ka band, and it opens up a lot of opportunities for people who are on the fringes of rural areas, where in the past, they couldn't pay for Ka band and Ku band. The only people who could, Ku band and C band, the only people who could do it were like maybe mining companies, people who are making huge money. Ka band, and eventually the next one that is coming up is called Q band. This would actually make it gets more efficient, it gets more cost efficient as well, and it opens up a lot of options for these rural communities. And it the speeds that we offer today, for example, can go up to 100 Mbps, which makes it a very, very viable option compared to, say, what fiber and 4G is actually offering. So that really is the advancement of technology, just like how we move from 2G to 4G and how the prices of 4G today. So we see the kind of same thing happening with satellite.
Cool, thank you. We have another question that's actually for all of you. If you had 1 minute to tell a student, either grade school or college, about space infrastructure, what would you say? Sarah, you want to go first?
Yes, hi. So yeah, how to say? Well, I can explain what I know about IoT infrastructure and like how we do IoT over space. So basically, I would ask a student to imagine we have a sensor here that that is measuring the temperature, let's say, of water on a fishing boat. Okay, this sensor is connected to IoT terminal, which is on the boat itself, which is like our applet solution. And then whatever data comes from the sensor, like the temperature, the temperature of the water, let's say, this small terminal, which is maybe this size, 25 centimeter or 30 centimeter, will transfer your data to the satellite in space, down to a data center somewhere, maybe in the same country or somewhere else. And then you can extract these data from your laptop screen on a specific software or portal, dashboard, whatever you can call it. You can get reports, real-time reports on spot, like every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, 1 hour, every day, whatever. You can customize it. So from the dashboard of your laptop, you can see real-time data of the water temperature on that boat.
Cool, that's good.
This is how IoT works.
Caroline, what would you say?
Where do I begin? I mean, I think what's kind of complicated is that Rocket Lab is offering a lot of different varieties of spacecraft. We have all kinds of different flavors of mission profiles that we offer. And so I think it can be anything from, re-entry capability, bringing a physical object into space and then bringing it back down. It can be, communications. It can be connecting satellites to each other in space. There's so many different things that we can offer from space that we haven't even envisioned yet that will kind of change the way that we live on Earth. And I think now is the most exciting time to be part of that development, because we have so many opportunities to do it. With Rocket Lab, we're an end-to-end company. We get to supply the components, design the spacecraft, build it, test it, launch it on our own rocket, and then operate it and bring it back if we want. So there's just so much. It's where do we begin?
That's pretty cool, though. That's pretty cool.
It is.
How about you, Haley? Do you have anything that you want to say to this student?
Yeah, I'm absolutely gonna go corny with it probably. Because it's just, I think the big takeaway is if we look at the history of, the International Space Station and, all of these, the NASA programs that have developed so much research, we can look to that and help kind of see what's in the future for how the space economy can affect us. And I guess my advice is similar, just dream big, because the role I'm in didn't exist a couple years ago, and that's going to just keep happening. There are going to be so many more roles coming up that don't exist now. So keep that intellectual curiosity about what's going on beyond our planet.
That's cool. How about you, Beatrice?
Mine is gonna be very cheesy as well. A little bit like
I like these kind of crazy cheesy things.
I think my advice would be that the industry is not as daunting as or niche as what people like to think it is. When I first joined, I knew nothing about satellites, and maybe that's what I will tell this grade school student, which is that think of it as, the satellite as being like a reflector, a mirror in the sky today that you launch. And then you just have a huge teleport, a transmitter that, sends a signal. The satellite is basically a mirror that reflects it down to a receiver, which could be your home. And then you get internet and you get TV and you can use it for all sorts of things. So that's just a very, that really got me understanding satellite and interested in the first place. So that would be what I would tell the grade school.
That is great. Well, I must say, I think we're up at 3:00. I know I'm supposed to turn it over to Jemai, I think, but I want to thank the panelists. You guys have been wonderful. I love being part of this. And I thank you for saying yes and responding to us. And it was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for your time, your energy, your open views of kind of like what's happening in our world. And I will turn it over to you, Jemai.
Yeah, thanks, Toni Lee. And thank you all of the panelists for all of your insights. That was totally excellent. Just quick reminder to everyone, if anyone's interested in being on a panel podcast, there's the speaker profile in the chat. Send us an email, message any one of us. We'd definitely love to hear more stories from everyone. And if you missed a record, if you know someone that missed a session and is interested in it, we will have a recording of this. We'll post it on the SSPI-WISE website. With that, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Thanks.
Have a great rest
Bye-bye.
of today. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.